The night my sister showed up at my door, I didn't think twice. That's the part that still gets to me. If I had hesitated, if I had paused for even a second, I might have noticed the signs, but I didn't. I opened the door, stepped aside, and let everything that followed walk straight into my life. She looked exhausted, not the normal tired you get from parenting, but something deeper, like she hadn't slept in days, like her thoughts were somewhere far away even as she stood in front of me. "Can you watch him for one night?" she asked quickly, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. "Just one. I need to handle something." Her son stood beside her, clutching a small backpack that looked too light to matter. "Of course," I said. "What's going on?" She shook her head. "It's nothing. I'll explain tomorrow." Tomorrow. I remember that word clearly. "My name is Hannah Miller. I'm 32 years old." And I believed her. She didn't come inside for long, just enough to kiss her son on the forehead and remind him to brush his teeth. She handed me the backpack and said, "Everything he needs is in there." I didn't check. I assumed clothes, pajamas, maybe a toothbrush. She hugged me quickly, too quickly, and walked back down the steps without looking back. I stood in the doorway and watched her car pull away, telling myself I was being dramatic for feeling uneasy. "She'll be back tomorrow," I said out loud, mostly to myself. Her son looked up at me. "Mom says I'm staying with you for a while," he said. "For one night," I corrected gently. He frowned, like he wasn't sure. That night passed quietly. I made dinner, we watched a movie, I set him up on the couch with blankets and pillows. When I went through the backpack to get his pajamas, my stomach tightened. One change of clothes. No pajamas, no toothbrush, no emergency contacts. Just a folder. Inside it were his birth certificate and a copy of his insurance card. That was when the unease sharpened into something else. But I still told myself not to panic. People forget things, people rush, people make mistakes. Morning came. No text, no call. I sent her a message. "Good morning. What time are you picking him up?" Nothing. An hour passed, then 2. I called. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same result. Her son sat at the kitchen table eating cereal, swinging his legs, completely calm. "When's Mom coming back?" he asked. "Soon," I said automatically. The lie tasted strange in my mouth. By the afternoon, the calm had evaporated. I called her workplace. She hadn't been there in days. I checked her social media. Her accounts were still there, but nothing new. No check-ins, no updates. I drove past her apartment on a whim. The parking space was empty. I knocked anyway. No answer. A neighbor I recognized from previous visits glanced out into the hallway. "She moved out," he said casually. "Yesterday, I think." My chest tightened. "Moved out?" I repeated. "Yeah, late night, truck and everything." I thanked him and walked back to my car on autopilot. When I got home, I sat on the couch staring at my phone, scrolling through unanswered messages. Something inside me finally clicked into place. This wasn't a delay. This wasn't an emergency that ran long. This was abandonment. I looked at the boy sitting on the floor, lining up toy cars like nothing in the world had changed. "How long did Mom say she'd be gone?" I asked carefully. "She said not to worry." That was it. No bedtime, no pickup time, no return date. Just don't worry. That night, after he fell asleep, I opened the folder she'd left behind. Every document was intentional, prepared, chosen. This hadn't been a last-minute decision. This had been planned. And the realization hit me with a force that left me breathless. My sister hadn't asked me to babysit. She had handed me responsibility she never intended to take back. One night had already turned into 2, and deep down, I knew the truth before I was ready to say it out loud. She wasn't running late. She wasn't coming back. The second day felt unreal. Like my brain refused to accept what my body already knew. I woke up before my alarm, heart pounding for no reason I could name, and the first thing I did was grab my phone. I stared at it the way people stare at doors after they hear a strange noise at night, half expecting answers to appear if I looked hard enough. Still nothing. No missed calls, no texts, no apology. Just the same silence that had followed me from her driveway to my couch to the edge of my bed. I told myself again, maybe her phone died. Then maybe she got pulled into something serious. Then maybe she's embarrassed and doesn't know how to explain it. Each excuse sounded weaker than the one before, because none of them explained why she'd left her child's birth certificate in a backpack like it was a handoff. My nephew, sweet, quiet, too used to adults being unpredictable, woke up and shuffled into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. "Is Mom coming today?" he asked. The question landed in my chest like a weight. "Yeah," I lied, forcing a smile. "We're just waiting to hear from her." He nodded like he'd heard that kind of answer before. That alone made my throat tighten. Because kids don't accept uncertainty that easily unless uncertainty is familiar. I called her again, straight to voicemail. I sent another message. "I'm getting worried. Call me now." Nothing. I tried her best friend. No answer. I called my mom next, because if I was going to accuse my sister of something this serious, I needed to be absolutely sure. "Honey," my mom said, picking up. "Good morning." "Mom," I said, keeping my voice controlled. "Have you heard from her?" A pause. "What do you mean?" she asked. "I mean, she dropped him off yesterday and I haven't heard from her since. She didn't come back." The line went quiet. Then my mom said, too quickly, "I'm sure she's fine." That was the first red flag of the day. Not concern, not surprise, reassurance. The kind that tries to close the topic before it opens. "Have you talked to her?" I pressed. Another pause, then, "Not today." The way she said that, hesitating on the word today, made my stomach drop. Meaning she'd talked to her recently. Meaning she might know something. "Mom," I said, quietly, "do you know where she is?" "I don't," but her voice didn't match the words. I could hear the carefulness in her tone, like she was walking across thin ice. "Hannah," she added quickly, "just give it a little time." Time. That word again, always used to delay accountability. I hung up, shaking. By noon, my fear turned into action. I took my nephew with me and drove to my sister's apartment again, this time refusing to accept a closed door as an answer. I knocked, waited, knocked again, nothing. The leasing office was open, so I walked in, trying to sound calm. "Hi, I'm looking for my sister. She lives in Unit 3B. I can't reach her." The woman behind the counter frowned sympathetically. "I'm sorry, ma'am, we can't give out tenant information." "I'm not asking for personal details," I said quickly. "I just need to know if she's okay. She left her child with me and she hasn't come back." That changed the woman's expression immediately. "Your sister left her child?" she repeated. My voice tightened. "Yes." She glanced toward the back office, then lowered her voice. "I can't tell you much, but she turned in her keys yesterday morning." Yesterday morning, before she came to my house. She had already ended her lease. She had already planned to disappear. I felt dizzy, gripping the counter to steady myself. "Did she leave a forwarding address?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. She shook her head. No. Back in the car, my nephew hummed quietly to himself, swinging his feet. He didn't know what had just been confirmed.
All he knew was that he was with Aunt Hannah and that I was trying to keep my smile from cracking. "Are we going home?" I asked. "Yes," I said, voice tight. "We're going home." Because at that point, home wasn't her mom's place anymore. It was mine. And I hated that I had to think like that. That night, I checked the backpack again. I looked harder this time. There was a folded note in the bottom, tucked beneath the folder. My hands shook as I unfolded it. It was short. "Hannah, I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore. Please take care of him for a little while. I'll come back when I can. L." That was it. No details, no timeline, no plan. Just a vague promise built on nothing. I stared at the signature. The casualness of it felt like a slap. A little while. As if a child were a suitcase you could leave with someone until you felt ready to claim it again. That night, after my nephew fell asleep, I sat at my kitchen table with the note in front of me and my phone beside it. My hands were steady now, not because I wasn't terrified, because I was past the stage where fear helped. My sister had turned in her keys before she dropped him off. She had planned her exit. She had left documents, not supplies. She hadn't asked me to babysit. She had assigned responsibility. And if she'd gone this far, there was only one logical question left. What was she running from?
The next morning, I stopped pretending this was temporary. The note my sister left wasn't an apology. It was a handoff. And the more I stared at those few lines, the more I realized something that made my stomach twist. She didn't write it like someone who planned to come back tomorrow. She wrote it like someone who needed to feel better about leaving. I made coffee, sat at my kitchen table, and started doing what I always do when I'm scared. I got organized. Not because I felt calm, because if I let emotion take the wheel, I was going to fall apart, and I didn't have that luxury anymore. There was a little boy in my guest room who trusted me to keep his world from collapsing. The backpack told the truth. I dumped the backpack out on the table like it was evidence. One change of clothes, a folder with his birth certificate and insurance card, the note. That was it. No pajamas, no toothbrush, no favorite toy, no extra socks, no snack. Nothing a loving parent packs when they expect to return in a day. Everything a person packs when they're trying to make sure the child can be identified if someone else has to take over. That thought made my chest tighten. I opened the folder again and looked closer. The insurance card was current. The birth certificate was a clean copy, not something pulled from a junk drawer last minute. The documents were too neatly arranged, too intentional. This wasn't a rushed decision made during a breakdown. This was prepared. The missing info that scared me most. I started looking for what wasn't there. No note with the child's pediatrician, no school paperwork, no emergency contacts besides me, no custody paperwork, which meant legally I was in the worst possible position. I was caring for a child who wasn't mine, with no written permission, no guardianship paperwork, and no way to prove I wasn't kidnapping him if someone decided to twist the story. A cold wave ran through me. I didn't just need to find my sister. I needed to protect both of us. The first call that felt like a warning. I called my sister again, one more time, hoping, irrationally, that she'd answer now that a day had passed and the panic had settled. Straight to voicemail. I called her best friend again. This time, she answered. "Hannah," she said, voice low, "I was wondering when you'd call." I froze. "What do you mean?" A pause, then, "She told me she might do something like this." My blood went cold. "She told you?" I repeated. "She's been talking for months about leaving, about starting over." "Starting over where?" I asked. "I don't know," she said. She stopped saying specifics. She just kept saying she couldn't breathe in this life anymore. I swallowed hard. Did she say anything about her son? Another pause. "She said you'd take care of him," the friend admitted quietly. My grip tightened on the phone. "She assumed that?" I asked. "She counted on it," the friend corrected. Counted on it, like I was a plan, not a person. The apartment wasn't just empty, it was clean. That afternoon, I went back to her apartment building, not to knock, but to look, because empty means chaotic, but what I saw through the blinds when I walked past the front window made my stomach drop. There was nothing left behind. No trash bags by the door, no boxes stacked in a corner, no half-packed mess. It looked cleared, cleaned, as if she didn't want a trace of herself remaining. That wasn't a spontaneous escape. That was a planned disappearance. The child's calm was its own red flag. Back home, my nephew sat on the couch watching cartoons, feet tucked under him, completely relaxed. I kept watching him out of my corner of eye, trying to piece together what he knew. "Hey, buddy," I said gently, sitting beside him. "Did Mom talk to you before you came here?" He didn't look away from the screen. "She said I had to be extra good." "That's it?" I asked. He shrugged. "She cried in the car." My throat tightened. "What did she say when she cried?" He thought about it. "She said she was sorry and that she loved me and that Aunt Hannah would keep me safe." Safe. That word hit me like a punch. Parents don't use that word unless they believe there's danger. Not danger from monsters, danger from consequences, danger from life catching up. The paper trail I didn't want to find. That night, after he fell asleep, I opened my laptop and did something I never wanted to do. I searched public records. At first, I told myself I was just being cautious, that I needed to check for anything obvious, evictions, legal notices, anything that would explain why she'd run. It took less than 5 minutes to find the first thing, an eviction filing. Her name, her apartment address. The date was 2 months earlier. My stomach twisted. She hadn't just moved out, she'd been pushed out, and she hadn't told me. Then I found a second record, a court date. Not a criminal charge, nothing like that, but something financial, a civil case, debt-related. I stared at the screen, feeling my heartbeat in my throat. This was bigger than exhaustion. This was her life collapsing behind the scenes while she smiled in family group chats and pretended everything was fine. And instead of asking for help honestly, she chose the one thing she knew would buy her time, leaving her child behind with someone responsible. Me. The realization that made me feel sick. I sat back and covered my mouth with my hand, because suddenly the timeline made sense. The eviction filing, the cleaned out apartment, the prepared documents, the vague note. She didn't just run because she couldn't do it anymore. She ran because she was about to be forced to face consequences, financial, legal, maybe even custody related, and she wanted a clean slate. And she left her son behind because he didn't fit in the slate she was trying to wipe clean. That thought made my eyes burn, not with tears yet, with anger. The next move. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't keep waiting for her to come back when she can. I needed answers, real ones. So I made a list. Call a family lawyer in the morning, contact his school or preschool to understand his enrollment status, document everything, texts, call logs, the note, the folder, find out where she went and who might be helping her. And as I typed the last line, another thought surfaced, one that made my stomach drop even further. If she planned this, someone might have helped her disappear. And if someone helped her disappear, it meant she wasn't just running from bills. She was running towards something, or someone. And I was about to find out exactly what.
The next morning, I woke up with a list already running through my head like an alarm that wouldn't shut off. Lawyer, school, records, proof. I moved through my kitchen quietly so I wouldn't wake my nephew. I made coffee I didn't really taste, then sat at the table with my laptop open and the folder of documents beside it like I was preparing for a job I never applied for. Because that's what it felt like my sister had assigned me a role and disappeared before I could refuse. I stared at the eviction filing again, rereading the dates, the address, the amounts due. My heart kept catching on the same thought. She was drowning, and she never told me, not once. The first call I made. I found a family law office close to my zip code and called as soon as they opened. My voice sounded calm, which almost scared me because it didn't match what was happening inside my chest. I need advice about temporary guardianship, I told the receptionist. My sister left her child with me and hasn't returned. There was a pause on the line.
Then her tone softened. "Do you have anything in writing?" she asked. "I have a note and his birth certificate and insurance card." "Okay," she said gently. "We can schedule a consult today. In the meantime, document everything. Dates, messages, call logs, and if you believe the child is abandoned, you may need to contact local authorities, not as punishment, but to establish a record." Establish a record. The phrase hit me hard because it meant what I'd been trying not to say out loud. This wasn't babysitting. This was abandonment. The school question that tightened my chest. After that call, I contacted the preschool listed on the papers in the folder. I used the calmest voice I could manage, like this was routine, like I wasn't standing on the edge of a life-changing cliff. "Hi," I said. "I'm Hannah Miller. My nephew has been staying with me, and I need to confirm his enrollment information." The woman on the phone sounded cautious at first, then relieved when she recognized the child's name. "Oh," she said, "we were hoping someone would call." My stomach dropped. "Why?" She hesitated. "Your sister hasn't responded to our messages in over a week. Tuition is overdue. We have a policy, if we can't reach the parent or guardian, we have to report it to administration." Over a week. A week. My sister hadn't disappeared yesterday. She had been disappearing for a while, slowly, quietly, step by step. "Did she list any emergency contacts?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "Your parents and you." I gripped the edge of the table. So my parents were on the list, which meant they would have known the school was trying to reach her, which meant they might know more than they're saying. The financial trail she left behind. I went back to my laptop and dug deeper, not with hacks or anything dramatic, just the kind of searching anyone can do when they're trying to understand why a person would vanish. Public records, court calendars, business listings. That's when I found something I hadn't expected. A small claims case. My sister's name was listed as the defendant. The plaintiff was a credit card company. The amount wasn't massive, but the filings showed a pattern: missed payments, late notices, a judgment request. I scrolled further and found another listing, this one for a different debt collector. Then another. It wasn't one mistake, it was a collapse. And as I stared at those dates, a new question formed in my mind. If she was this deep in debt, where was the money going? The message that answered too much. I was halfway through copying down the case numbers when my phone buzzed. A text from my mom. "How's he doing?" That was it. No, "Where is your sister?" No, "What happened?" No, "Are you okay?" Just, "How's he doing?" My fingers hovered over the screen. I typed, deleted, typed again. Finally, I wrote, "Do you know where she is?" A long pause. Then, "She's an adult, Hannah. We can't control her." That wasn't an answer. It was a dodge. I stared at it until my eyes burned, then wrote, "Did you know she was leaving him with me?" Another long pause. Then, "Don't make this worse." My blood went cold, because "don't make this worse" meant there was already a worse happening. It meant they knew something that could get ugly if exposed. The visit I didn't want to make. That afternoon, I drove to my parents' house with my nephew in the back seat. I told myself it was for him, so he could see familiar faces, so he could feel stability. But the truth was, I needed to look them in the eye. When my mom opened the door, she froze for half a second. Then her face melted into forced softness. "Oh, honey," she said quickly, stepping aside. "Bring him in." My dad appeared behind her, tight-jawed and quiet. My nephew ran to him like nothing had changed. And that broke something in me. Because kids don't understand betrayal the way adults do. They just recognize safety. I waited until my nephew was distracted in the living room, then I lowered my voice. "Tell me what you know," I said. My mom blinked, defensive. About what? About where she went,
About the eviction, the school not hearing from her, the debt cases. Tell me what you know. My dad exhaled sharply and looked away. My mom's mouth tightened. She's been struggling. I know, I said. I'm asking if you knew she was going to leave her child with me and disappear. Silence. Then my mom said the words I'll never forget. She promised she'd come back. My heart slammed against my ribs. So yes, you knew. My dad finally spoke, voice low. We didn't think she'd actually do it. But you let her, I said. My mom's eyes filled with tears, real time, but still not enough to erase what was happening. She said she needed a reset, she whispered. She said she just needed a little time. A reset. My nephew wasn't part of her reset. I was about to speak when my dad added something quietly, like he didn't want it to be heard even by the walls. She went with someone, he said. I froze. Who? My mom shot him a look. My dad's jaw tightened. We don't know everything. You just said she went with someone, I pressed, voice sharper now. Who? My mom swallowed hard, eyes glossy. Hannah, please. That pleading tone didn't soften me, it hardened me, because they weren't protecting my sister anymore. They were protecting the secret, and whatever secret it was big enough that they were willing to watch me become a sudden parent overnight instead of telling me the truth. I looked toward the living room where my nephew was laughing at something on TV. Then I turned back to my parents. Tell me, I said, voice low and steady, who helped her leave? My mom's lips trembled, and then she said a name, so quietly I almost didn't catch. But I did, and the second I heard it, I felt my entire stomach drop, because that name wasn't a stranger. It was someone I trusted.
For a second, I couldn't speak. The name my mom whispered didn't just land, it detonated. Because it wasn't some random guy from a bar or an unknown friend from work, it was Caleb Whitman, the same Caleb who'd been in and out of my sister's life like a bad habit she couldn't quit. The same Caleb who always had a new opportunity, always had a temporary setback, always had a way of talking himself out of accountability. And worst of all, he wasn't a stranger to my family. They knew exactly who he was, which meant this wasn't a surprise to them. It was a choice. Caleb? I repeated, voice low. You're telling me she left with Caleb? My mom's eyes flicked toward the living room, toward my nephew, then back to me. She said he had a plan, she whispered. A plan. My stomach twisted. My dad rubbed his temple like he was already exhausted by the consequences he didn't want to face. Hannah, don't make this bigger than it is. I stared at him. Bigger than it is? I repeated. My sister abandoned her child and disappeared with a man you don't trust, and you're asking me not to make it bigger? My mom's voice shook. She didn't abandon him. She left him with you. That sentence hit like a slap, as if leaving her child without consent was somehow softer because she chose me to absorb the impact. Asking would have been babysitting. This is abandonment. My dad opened his mouth, then closed it, because he knew I was right. The moment I stopped chasing her. On the drive home, my hands were steady on the wheel, but my chest felt like it was full of ice. My nephew hummed softly in the back seat, completely unaware that his mother had chosen a clean slate that didn't include him. And that's when I realized something painful but clarifying. Calling my sister over and over wasn't helping. It wasn't bringing her back. It wasn't protecting my nephew. It was only keeping me in the role my family expected, the role where I stayed frantic, emotional, and easy to manage. If I stayed in that role, they could keep delaying the truth. So I stopped.
Not because I didn't care, because I cared enough to act like this was real. What silence gave me. That night, I didn't send another "please call me" text. I didn't leave another voicemail. Instead, I opened a notebook and started documenting everything like my lawyer had told me to. Date and time she dropped him off, what she said at the door, what was in the backpack, the note she left, the leasing office confirmation, the school call, my parents admitting they knew, the name Caleb Whitman. The more I wrote, the calmer I became, because chaos thrives in vagueness. Documentation is the opposite of vague. Documentation turns a story into a record. The first protective step. The next morning, I met with the family lawyer. I brought the folder, I brought the note, I brought screenshots of my call logs, dozens of attempts with no response. I brought the leasing office email confirming she'd turned in her keys. The lawyer didn't look shocked. That scared me more than if she had. She said, "This is abandonment," she said plainly. "You're doing the right thing by establishing legal standing early." I swallowed. What does that mean? She explained, "It means we file for temporary emergency guardianship, not to punish your sister, to protect the child, and to protect you." Protect me? Those words landed heavily because I hadn't been thinking about myself at all. But she was right. Right now, legally, I was just an aunt with a child in my home. If my sister resurfaced tomorrow and accused me of something, the system wouldn't care about my intentions. It would care about procedure. So we started the paperwork. And for the first time since my sister vanished, I felt something solid beneath my feet. The second step was even harder. The lawyer asked me a question I didn't want to answer. Has the child's mother ever left him like this before? I thought about my nephew's calm acceptance, the way he didn't panic when I said soon, the way he nodded like he'd heard that kind of reassurance before. My throat tightened. "Not like this," I said carefully, "but she's disappeared emotionally a lot." The lawyer nodded slowly, typing notes. Then she looked up. "Do you know if anyone helped her leave?" I held my breath. "Yes," I said. "Caleb." The lawyer's expression sharpened. "Then we need to consider whether she's being influenced or controlled, and we need to be prepared for her to come back when she needs something. Needs something, not when she misses her child, when she needs a solution." The call I didn't expect. That afternoon, my phone rang. Unknown number. I stared at it for a second, then answered. "Hannah?" a man's voice said. I didn't recognize it at first. "This is Officer Ramirez," he continued. "We're following up on a wellness inquiry regarding your sister." My heart jumped. "Yes," I said quickly. "She left her child with me and disappeared. I'm trying to locate her." There was a pause. "Ma'am, we contacted her phone carrier. Her number was disconnected this morning." Disconnected? My stomach dropped, because that was the difference between running late and erasing yourself. He continued, "Do you know anyone she may be with?" My mouth dried. "Yes," I said. "Caleb Whitman." Another pause, longer this time. "We've had prior calls involving that name," he said quietly. "Do you have a current address for him?" I felt cold, not because the officer sounded alarmed, because he sounded familiar, like Caleb wasn't just a bad boyfriend, he was a pattern. The choice that locked everything in. After I hung up, I walked into the living room where my nephew sat building something out of blocks. He looked up and smiled at me like I was the safest thing in his world, and I understood, with a clarity that hurt, this wasn't about finding my sister and bringing her back. It was about building a life stable enough that if she returned, she couldn't take him back on a whim, not without proving she deserved to. I knelt beside him and smoothed his hair back gently. "Hey, buddy," I said softly. "You hungry?" He nodded. "Okay," I said. "I'm gonna make us dinner." He went back to his blocks, content, and as I stood up, I made a decision so quiet no one else could hear it, but it changed everything. I was done chasing her. From now on, if she wanted to be in her son's life again, she was going to have to come through the system, through the paperwork, through the truth. Because the next time she showed up, it wasn't going to be as my sister asking for a favor. It was going to be as a woman trying to reclaim something she left behind, and I would be ready.
The first official letter arrived 3 days later. It was a single sheet of paper in a plain envelope. Nothing dramatic about it. No bold red warnings, no urgent stamped across the front. Just my name and address printed neatly in the corner. But when I opened it, my hands still shook. Because the moment you involve the system, the story stops being emotional and starts being documented. And documentation makes things real in a way feelings never can. Temporary guardianship didn't feel temporary. My attorney filed for emergency temporary guardianship, and the court processed it faster than I expected. The judge granted me provisional authority pending a full hearing. The words sounded clinical when my lawyer explained them. Temporary, emergency, provisional. But in my life, it meant I could finally do basic things without fear. I could enroll my nephew in school. I could take him to the doctor. I could speak on his behalf. And still, signing those forms felt like swallowing something heavy, because I never wanted to take his mother's place. I just wanted her to come back. The pediatrician visit that broke me. The first time I took him to the doctor, I thought it would be routine, a checkup, a way to establish care, a practical step. But sitting in that waiting room with him swinging his legs beside me, I felt like everyone could see through me. Not in a judgmental way, in a worried way, like they could sense the story I was trying to hold together with calm voice and steady paperwork. When the nurse asked for his mother's contact information, I paused. I hated that pause. I gave my own number instead, and for a brief second, my nephew looked up at me, confused. "Mom's phone doesn't work," he said casually. The nurse smiled politely and moved on, but I felt my throat tighten because he said it like it was normal, like Mom's disappearing was something you just explain away. School wasn't just school. The preschool administrator was kind, professional, practiced, probably used to families in crisis. "We'll need updated pickup permissions," she said. "We've been unable to reach your sister for a while." "For how long?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She glanced at her file. "Almost 2 weeks." 2 weeks. My chest tightened again. This wasn't a sudden break. It was an exit ramp my sister had been taking for days, maybe longer. I signed forms, submitted custody documents, updated emergency contacts, and it struck me, my sister had included my parents and Nia's contacts because she knew if she vanished, someone would have to take over. She had set the stage. She just hadn't asked if I wanted the role. The CPS call I didn't want but needed. A week later, I received a call from Child Protective Services. My stomach dropped when I saw the number. The caseworker's voice was calm, measured. "Miss Miller, we received a report of possible abandonment involving your nephew. We'd like to schedule a home visit." My first instinct was panic. My second was anger. Then I remembered what my lawyer said. This wasn't punishment. This was record. So I agreed. Preparing for the visit. That night, I cleaned like my life depended on it. Not because my apartment was messy, but because I wanted everything to look stable. I set up a small corner in the spare room with books and a nightlight. I bought extra snacks, extra socks, extra everything. I kept telling myself it was just preparation, but deep down, I knew what I was really doing.
I was proving I could be his safe place, because if my sister came back and tried to accuse me of taking him, I needed the system to see the truth, that he wasn't missing, he was cared for. The home visit. The caseworker arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. She was polite, professional, and observant. She looked around without making it obvious, noting the child-proofing, the food in the pantry, the bed made up with cartoon sheets. My nephew sat at the table coloring while she asked me questions. When did the child's mother last have contact with you? Do you have any reason to believe she's in danger? Has she ever left him before? I answered honestly. I showed her the note, the folder, the call logs, the court paperwork. The caseworker's expression tightened when she saw the birth certificate left behind. "That's unusual," she said quietly. "Yeah, it didn't feel accidental." She nodded, then glanced toward my nephew. "He seems comfortable with you," she observed. "He's been with me a lot," I said, choosing my words carefully. "Even before this." She wrote something down. Then she asked a question that made my stomach drop. "Do you know who the mother is with?" I swallowed. "Caleb Whitman," I said. The caseworker's pen paused. "That name is familiar," she said softly. My blood cold. The part that became bigger than my family. After she left, I sat on the couch staring at the door long after it closed, because familiar meant there was history. It meant this might not just be about debt or eviction. It meant my sister might be tied to something riskier than I understood. And if she was with Caleb, and Caleb had a record of involvement with law enforcement or CPS, then my nephew wasn't just abandoned, he was in danger if she returned without stability. The call from my parents that night. My mom called, later, voice tight. "Why is CPS involved?" she demanded. I blinked, stunned by her tone. "You knew she left him," I said calmly. "The system gets involved when a parent disappears. But now it's official," she snapped. "Now people are looking at our family." There it was. Not concern for the child, concern for appearances. I inhaled slowly. "This was already official when she left him," I said calmly. "You just didn't want it documented." Silence. Then quieter. "What are you trying to do, Hannah?" I felt something inside me harden. "I'm trying to keep him safe, because someone has to." The truth settled in. That night, I watched my nephew sleep. His face was peaceful, mouth slightly open, one hand curled around the edge of a blanket. He didn't know what CPS was. He didn't know what court filings were. He didn't know his mother had disconnected her phone, erased her apartment, and disappeared with a man whose name made professionals pause. All he knew was that he was fed, safe, tucked in. And I knew then with absolute certainty that the system wasn't the enemy. The system was the structure I needed, because my sister's return, if it happened, couldn't be based on feelings or promises or one night. It would have to be based on proof, and the system was going to demand it.
I didn't expect the hardest part of all this to be my family. I expected fear. I expected exhaustion. I expected sleepless nights and legal paperwork and awkward conversations with school administrators. What I didn't expect was the way my own blood would look at me like I was the problem, like I had somehow created the mess my sister left behind. It started the morning after the CPS home visit. My phone buzzed nonstop while I was packing my nephew's lunch. I ignored it at first because mornings had become a careful routine. Breakfast, shoes, backpack, calming him down when he asked questions I didn't have answers for. But by the time I dropped him off and got back into my car, the missed calls had stacked up. Mom, Dad, Aunt Denise, 2 cousins I barely spoke to. My stomach tightened. That kind of group urgency never meant anything good. I called my mom first. She answered immediately, like she'd been waiting with the phone in her hand. "What were you thinking?" she snapped. I blinked. "About what?" "CPS, Hannah," she said, voice sharp. "Why would you bring CPS into this?" I stared at the steering wheel, stunned. "I didn't bring CPS," I said slowly. "My sister abandoned her child. The school couldn't reach her. I filed for emergency guardianship. That triggers a process. My mom made an angry sound in her throat. You made it official. You made it public. Public. That word again. Not safe, not stable, not protected. Public. So this is about how it looks? I asked, keeping my voice steady. There was a pause, just long enough to confirm it. We're a family, she said, finally. We handle things privately. I gripped the phone harder. Families handle things privately when there's nothing to hide. This isn't a messy argument. This is a missing mother and an abandoned child. My mom's voice shifted, less angry, more warming. Your sister is going through something. You don't understand what she's dealing with. I almost laughed, but it wasn't funny. I'm raising her son, I said quietly. I understand plenty. By lunchtime, the pressure escalated. My Aunt Denise texted, "Call me, we need to talk." When I called, her voice was gentle, but I heard the underlying agenda immediately. Hannah, honey, I love you, but are you sure you want to go down this road? This road? I repeated. The legal stuff, she said carefully. CPS, court, you know how these things can spiral. I took a slow breath. What's the alternative? I asked. I just wait indefinitely and hope my sister decides to come back? Aunt Denise sighed. Your mom is worried this will make your sister run farther. There it was. Everyone's fear wasn't about the child, it was about the adult who caused the damage. She already ran, and she disconnected her phone. Aunt Denise hesitated. Hannah, she called your mom. My blood went cold. When? I asked. 2 nights ago, she admitted. She said she needed time. She said you were overreacting. My jaw tightened. And did she ask about her son? I asked. Silence. That silence answered for her. That evening, my dad showed up at my apartment. He didn't knock like a visitor. He knocked like someone who believed he still had authority here. When I opened the door, his face was tense, controlled but strained. You need to talk, he said. I stepped aside, letting him in, mostly because my nephew was at the table coloring and I didn't want him hearing conflict through a door. My dad's eyes flicked to the child, then back to me. You're scaring him, he said quietly. I stared at him. I'm scaring him? I repeated. My dad lowered his voice. The all strangers, the questions, the paperwork. The paperwork is the only reason I can take him to the doctor, I snapped, then forced myself to lower my tone. Dad, I'm not doing this to him. His mother did. My dad's jaw tightened. Your sister made mistakes. Mistakes? I interrupted. She turned in her keys, disconnected her phone, and left her kid with a backpack full of documents. That's not a mistake. That's an exit plan. My dad looked away like the words were physically uncomfortable. She's still his mother, he said finally. And I'm here, I replied. Then came the part that made my stomach twist. My dad pulled out his phone and showed me a screenshot. It was a message sent from a number I didn't recognize to a family group chat. It was my sister, and the message said, Hannah is trying to take my son from me. I asked her for help, and she's turning the whole family against me. Please don't let her do this. I stared at the screen, the air leaving my lungs. She was rewriting the story. Not just for sympathy, for leverage, for control. I didn't turn anyone against her, I said slowly. She left. She vanished. I filed for paperwork to keep him safe. My dad's voice rose slightly. But you can see how this looks, Hannah. I looked him dead in the eye. No, I said. I can see how she wants it to look. The next day, it got worse. My cousin posted a vague status online about family members who weaponize the system. People commented in agreement like they knew what they were talking about. My aunt texted again, "Can you please just pause the court thing until she comes home?" Pause. As if guardianship worked like a pause button, as if my nephew's life was a temporary inconvenience. That night, I sat at my kitchen table and felt something settle in my chest. Not sadness, not rage, resolve. Because my family wasn't just enabling my sister's disappearance, they were helping her control the narrative from a distance. And if they were willing to do that, then I couldn't trust them to prioritize my nephew's safety when things got complicated. So I did the only thing I could do. I got even more organized. I saved screenshots of the message, I documented every call, every accusation, every request to keep it private. I emailed my attorney and forwarded the evidence. Then I opened my laptop and searched one more time, this time for Caleb Whitman. And when I found a recent address tied to his name, my stomach dropped. Because it wasn't in another state, it wasn't far, it was less than 40 minutes from me. Which meant one thing: if my sister decided to come back, she could show up at my door at any time. And based on the message she sent to the family, she wasn't coming back to apologize, she was coming back to claim. The night I found Caleb Whitman's address, I didn't sleep. Not because I was panicking, because my brain was running through scenarios like a courtroom replay. If my sister came back, she wouldn't come back alone. If she came back with Caleb, it wouldn't be a calm conversation. And if she'd already started telling people I was trying to take her son, then she was laying the groundwork for a fight. Which meant I couldn't wait for her to show up and make the first move. I had to make one first. Not emotional, legal, clean. The kind of move that doesn't require yelling to be powerful. The attorney call that changed the game. The next morning, I called my attorney as soon as her office opened. She might come back soon, I said, and she's already telling people I'm trying to steal him. There was a short pause. Do you have proof of that? My attorney asked. Yes, I replied. Screenshots. Send them, she said immediately. And Hannah, do not meet her alone. If she shows up, you call law enforcement, not as drama, as documentation. Documentation again, the same word that had become my lifeline. My attorney continued, we're going to file 2 things today: a request to extend temporary guardianship and a motion for a formal custody hearing. My chest tightened. A hearing, I repeated. Yes, she said calmly, because right now she's relying on ambiguity. She wants it messy. A hearing makes it structured. Structured meant safe. Structured meant rules. I exhaled slowly. Okay, I said. Do it. Creating a paper trail the system respects. That afternoon, my attorney filed the motion and advised me to take 2 additional steps. Notify the school that only I was authorized for pickup, notify the pediatrician's office that the child's mother was unreachable and there was a pending guardianship case. None of it was about revenge, it was about reducing risk. I drove to the school with my nephew's guardianship paperwork and met with the administrator in person. I need to update the pickup list immediately, I said. The administrator nodded, professional and calm. We can do that. Is there a safety concern? I hesitated, then answered honestly. There may be, I said. If his mother returns, I don't know what state she'll be in or who she'll be with. The administrator didn't blink. She simply added a note to his file and looked me in the eye. We'll take this seriously, she said. I felt a wave of relief, because for the first time, someone wasn't trying to protect my sister's feelings. They were protecting the child. The conversation I had with my nephew. That night, after dinner, my nephew sat on the couch with his stuffed animal tucked under his arm. He looked up at me with that serious little expression kids get when they've been holding questions in too long. Aunt Hannah, he said quietly, did I do something bad? My throat tightened instantly. No, I said, sitting beside him. Why would you think that? He shrugged. Mom left. My chest ached. I kept my voice soft. Sometimes grown-ups make choices that have nothing to do with you. He frowned. Is she mad at me? No, I said firmly. This isn't your fault. He stared at his hands. When is she coming back? That question was the hardest part, because the truth was, I didn't know,
And worse, I didn't trust that her coming back would automatically be good for him. So I answered the only way I could without lying. I don't know, I said gently, but you're safe here, I promise. He nodded slowly, eyes glossy. Then he leaned into me like he'd been waiting all day for that reassurance. I held him close and swallowed the lump in my throat, because promising safety meant I had to earn it. The quiet preparation that made me ready. The next few days were a blur of practical changes. I installed a simple door camera. I updated locks, not because I thought my sister had keys, but because I needed to feel in control of my space. I kept a folder by the door with every piece of documentation: the note, the guardianship order, the court filing, the screenshots. I also did something else. I told 2 neighbors what was happening. Not gossip, safety. If anyone comes to my door looking for trouble, call me, and if you hear shouting, call the police. They nodded. No judgment, just understanding. The family reaction when they found out. My mom called the moment she heard there was a court hearing. "Hannah, what are you doing? You're making this permanent." I stayed calm. "No," I said. "I'm making it structured." "She's her mother," my mom snapped. "And she abandoned him," I replied. "She didn't abandon him, she left him with you." The same line again. I closed my eyes, studying my voice. "Mom," I said quietly, "leaving a child without consent and disappearing is abandonment, even if you pick someone responsible." She went quiet. Then she tried a different tactic. "Do you really want to destroy your relationship with your sister?" I exhaled slowly. My sister destroyed trust the moment she left him. I'm just refusing to pretend it didn't happen. The surprise that shifted everything. 2 nights later, my door camera alerted me to movement. My stomach dropped as I opened the app. Headlights, a car idling at the curb, then a figure stepping out. Female. My chest tightened. My sister. And she wasn't alone. A man stepped out behind her, tall, shoulders squared, moving like someone who expected conflict. Even through the grainy video, I knew. Caleb. They walked toward my door. My heart hammered, but my mind stayed clear. I didn't open it. I didn't step outside. I grabbed my folder, my phone, and stood behind the locked door, breathing slowly. They knocked. Hard. "Hannah," my sister called, voice sharp. "Open the door." My nephew stirred in his room, and my whole body tightened with protective instinct. I didn't answer her. Instead, I called 911, not because I wanted drama, because my attorney was right. Documentation, a record, a clear trail that showed I was protecting a child, not stealing one. My sister knocked again. "Stop acting crazy," she shouted. Then Caleb's voice came through the door, low and threatening. "You can't keep her kid from her." I swallowed hard, and for the first time, I didn't feel afraid of them. I felt ready, because I wasn't alone anymore. I had the system, I had paperwork, and I had the truth. The police arrived faster than I expected. Maybe because my voice was steady on the call, maybe because I said the words child, custody order, and threatening male in the same sentence, or maybe because officers have seen enough situations like this to recognize when something is about to turn ugly. Either way, when the flashing lights reflected off my living room wall, my stomach finally unclenched just a little. Outside, my sister's voice rose. "This is insane," she shouted. "I'm her mother." Caleb stayed close behind her, like he was bracing for a fight. I didn't open the door until I saw the officers on the camera and heard one of them speak firmly. "Ma'am, step away from the door." I exhaled slowly and unlocked it. The cold night air rushed in, and with it came the reality I'd been preparing for. The moment my sister came back wasn't emotional. It was aggressive. It wasn't about her son. It was about control.
The officers changed the tone instantly. 2 officers stood on my porch, calm but alert. My sister was in front of them, arms flailing, face flushed. Caleb hovered half a step behind her, jaw tight, eyes darting around like he was calculating angles. "My sister stole my kid," she yelled the moment the door opened. "She's keeping him from me." One officer held up a hand. "Ma'am, we need everyone to calm down." My sister pointed at me. "She's lying. She's making it look like I abandoned him." The officer turned to me. "Ma'am, do you have documentation of custody or guardianship?" I didn't hesitate. I handed him the folder. The note, the emergency order, the court motion confirmation, the call logs, the screenshots of her message accusing me. The officer flipped through it slowly, face unreadable. Then he looked up at my sister. "Ma'am," he said, measured, "this indicates you left your child in her care and there is a temporary guardianship order in place." My sister's face twisted. "Temporary? That doesn't mean she can keep him." "It means," the officer replied, "that right now she has legal authority pending a hearing." My sister's voice dropped into something sharper. "This is all because she's bitter. She's always hated me." I almost laughed at that, because it wasn't about hate, it was about safety. Caleb made it worse. Caleb stepped forward. "She's his mom," he said, voice low. "You can't keep a kid from his mother over some paperwork." The officer's expression hardened. "Sir," he said, "step back. This doesn't involve you." Caleb scoffed. "It does if she's being manipulated." The second officer shifted his stance slightly. "Sir," he repeated, more firmly, "step back now." Caleb's eyes narrowed, but he obeyed, and that was the first time I saw what he really was. Not a protector, a pressure point, someone who leaned into chaos and tried to control outcomes through intimidation. My nephew woke up. Then the sound I'd been dreading came from the hallway. Small footsteps. My nephew, sleepy and confused, rubbing his eyes. "Aunt Hannah?" he called softly. My sister's entire posture changed, like a switch flipped. "Oh, baby!" she cried dramatically, rushing forward. My body moved before my mind could. I stepped between her and the hallway. "No," I said firmly, "stop." My sister froze, eyes widening like she couldn't believe I'd blocked her. "She's my son," she snapped. "And he's scared," I replied. "You don't get to barge in here with a strange man and pretend this is normal." Caleb muttered something under his breath that I didn't catch. The officer stepped forward. "Ma'am, do not enter the residence." My sister's face crumpled into tears, fast, theatrical. "I just want my baby," she sobbed. My nephew peeked around the corner and stared at her, not with excitement, with uncertainty. That uncertainty broke my heart, because kids don't hesitate with safe people. The question my nephew asked. He looked at my sister and said quietly, "Why did you leave?" The porch went silent. My sister's sobbing stopped mid-breath. Her eyes flicked to Caleb, then back to my nephew. "I didn't leave," she said quickly, voice bright and false. "I just had to fix something. I was coming back." My nephew stared at her for a long moment. "Your phone didn't work." My sister's smile twitched. "It broke," she said, too quickly. The officer glanced at me, then at the paperwork again. My sister added, "I want him now. I'm taking him. This is ridiculous." The officer's tone stayed calm but firm. "Ma'am, you cannot remove the child tonight. There is a court order in place. If you attempt to take him without following legal procedure, you could be charged." Charged, that word finally broke through whatever fantasy my sister had been clinging to. Her face shifted from fake tears to fury. "So you're choosing her?" she snapped at the officers. "You're choosing my sister over me?" The officer didn't flinch. "I'm choosing the court order," he replied. The moment she exposed herself.
My sister's voice rose again, sharp and desperate. "Fine," she spat. "If you won't give him back, I'll tell everyone what you did. I'll tell them you stole him because you always wanted to be the good one." I stared at her. I didn't shout. I didn't argue. I simply said, "You left him with a birth certificate. That isn't babysitting. That's abandonment." Her eyes flashed. Then, like she couldn't stop herself, she blurted it out. "I didn't have a choice." That single sentence changed everything, because it was the first honest thing she'd said since she returned. I tilted my head slightly. "You had a choice," I said, quietly. "You just didn't like the consequences of the choices you made." Caleb shifted behind her, restless. The officers stepped in again. "Ma'am," one of them said, "you need to leave the property tonight. If you return and cause a disturbance again, you will be trespassed." She stared at me, breathing hard. Then she turned to my nephew, forcing her voice soft again. "Baby, Mommy loves you," she tried to lure him. My nephew didn't move. He stayed near me. And in that moment, my sister realized something she hadn't expected. She couldn't just walk back in and reclaim the role. Not after disappearing, not after lying, not after showing up with Caleb like a weapon. The last thing she said before leaving. As she walked away, she turned back one last time. "This isn't over," she hissed at me. I didn't respond, because she was right. It wasn't over. But the next part wouldn't be decided on a porch. It would be decided in court, with proof, with records, with a judge who didn't care about family guilt or dramatic tears. And for the first time since my sister dropped him off for one night, I felt something solid settle in my chest. I wasn't afraid of her anymore. I was prepared.
The next 2 weeks moved in a strange rhythm, half ordinary, half surreal. On the outside, life looked normal again. Breakfast at the table, backpack by the door, a little jacket zipped up wrong because small hands still struggled with the zipper. My nephew laughing at cartoons like the world wasn't holding its breath. But underneath that routine, everything was tightening toward one point: court. Not the dramatic kind you see on TV. No shouting, no slamming doors, just paper, timelines, and a judge who didn't care who cried the loudest, only who showed up, who stayed, and who did the work. And for once, I was grateful for that. The hearing I wasn't afraid of anymore. My attorney met me outside the courthouse that morning. She looked calm, the way people look when they've done something 100 times and know exactly what matters. "Just tell the truth," she said. "Don't speculate. Don't defend yourself emotionally. Facts win here." Facts. I'd been living in facts for weeks. The note, the disconnected phone, the turned-in keys, the school calls, the CPS record, the night she showed up with Caleb, and the most important fact of all, she left her child and disappeared. I walked into that courthouse with my nephew's stuffed animal in my purse, not because he needed it, but because I did. A reminder of why I was here, a reminder that this wasn't about winning, it was about protecting. Seeing her again felt different. My sister arrived 10 minutes late, like she still believed time bent around her. Caleb wasn't allowed inside the courtroom with her. My attorney had already handled that, filing the police report and requesting restrictions due to intimidation concerns. My sister's eyes found mine and narrowed. She looked less like a mother who missed her child and more like someone furious that her escape plan had been interrupted. She tried to cry when the judge entered. It didn't work. The judge asked one simple question first. "When was the last time you had physical custody of your child?" My sister hesitated. She glanced at her attorney. Then she said, 2 weeks ago." My attorney stood up calmly and said, "Respectfully, Your Honor, it has been over a month." Then she submitted the documents. Dates don't care about feelings. My sister tried to explain it away, how she was overwhelmed, how she needed time, how she was trying to get stable. The judge listened, expression unreadable, and then asked her another question. Why did you leave the child's birth certificate with the aunt? Her mouth opened, then closed again, because there was no good answer for that. Caleb finally became part of the record. Then the judge asked about Caleb, because his name had now appeared in a police report, a CPS note, and multiple messages. My sister tried to minimize it. "He's just helping me," she said quickly. The judge looked down at the paperwork, then back up. "Is he employed?" the judge asked. She hesitated again. "Does he have a stable residence?" the judge continued. She didn't answer fast enough, and that hesitation said more than a speech ever could. The judge didn't punish her for being overwhelmed. The judge responded to what mattered. The child had stability with me. The child had routine with me. The child had care with me. And my sister had vanished. The ruling that changed everything. When the judge spoke, the courtroom felt like it stopped breathing. Temporary guardianship was extended. Visitation, if any, would be supervised and scheduled through the court. My sister would need to meet specific requirements, stable housing, proof of income, and consistent contact before any custody changes could even be considered. No drama, just structure. And structure was the one thing my sister couldn't manipulate. She stared at the judge like she couldn't believe the system didn't care about her tears. Then she looked at me like I had done this to her. I didn't flinch because she'd done it to herself. The quiet part that hurt the most. Outside the courthouse, my parents approached me cautiously. My mom's eyes were red. My dad looked older than he had a month ago. "We didn't realize," my mom whispered, like the words were too heavy to say at full volume. I didn't ask what she meant, because I knew. They didn't realize how bad it was. They didn't realize Caleb was this involved. They didn't realize my sister would actually walk away. Or maybe they did, and they just wanted to believe it would never land on them. But it did. It landed on me. And I didn't drop it. The boundary that finally stuck. On the drive home, my phone buzzed. A text from my sister. "You think you won, but you stole him from me." I stared at the words until they blurred. Then I typed back one sentence. "If you want to be his mother again, prove it with consistency, not threats." I didn't send anything else. No argument, no explanation, no apology for the role I'd been forced into, because I was done being pulled into her chaos. Saying my name again. That night, after my nephew fell asleep, safe, full, tucked in, I sat on the edge of the couch and let myself feel the weight of everything. Not just the court day, the whole month. The fear, the rage, the paperwork, the way my family tried to keep it private so they wouldn't have to face the truth. And I grounded myself the way I did the first night, by naming my reality clearly. My name is Hannah Miller. I'm 32 years old, and I didn't choose this responsibility, but I chose what to do with it. I chose to protect the child who didn't ask to be left behind. What changed in our family forever? My sister didn't come back apologetic. She came back demanding, and because of that, the illusion shattered for everyone. My parents stopped defending the idea of family privacy when they saw what privacy had been hiding. My extended family went quiet when court documents replaced rumors, and my sister, who always relied on people smoothing things over, ran into something she couldn't charm: a record. The ending I never wanted but needed. I didn't get my sister back, not the sister I thought I had, but I gained something stronger than denial. I gained structure. I gained clarity. I gained the kind of peace that comes when you stop chasing people who only return to take. And when my nephew smiles at me now, when he reaches for my hand without hesitation, I feel something I didn't think I'd feel again after that first night. Hope. Not fragile hope, real hope. Because stability, once built, can outlast chaos. Thank you for staying with me until the end. If this story meant something to you, I'll see you in the next one.